Welcome back to Rocky Mountain Residential, a podcast by MSAM Collective. I'm Kelly McBartlett, and today we're joined by Alex Schuman, president of Schuman Companies. So, welcome, Alex.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you and Phil, your brother, founded Schuman Companies. How long ago was that?
2013.
Okay. So, it's been some time now.
Yes.
What influenced you guys to get into development?
Well, I think it really started in college. I got my real estate license, and shortly after that, graduating, both Philip and I purchased our first rental house. We started with residential student housing around campus.
Yep.
And one house turned into five, and then we got into multifamily value add acquisitions is what we specialized in for several years. And after getting into multiple of those, led into multifamily development, and now I think we've done. When I say a little of everything, we've probably done a project in every real estate sector. I think there is to do here in Northern Colorado.
Yeah, I know I've seen you guys in your hands in a lot of different places. Where do you think most of your development activity has been?
Well, I think it definitely was heavily focused in multifamily. I would say, but really that kind of shifted into more commercial, mixed use, industrial property types. Really, kind of pre-COVID, and it had nothing to do with really COVID. The market was kind of shifting out of that multifamily kind of area, and so we diversified into those sectors. And so we're now, it's kind of with the pendulum swinging. We just broke ground on our first multifamily project in the last 6 years.
Wow.
So we're now kind of getting back into some more residential, but it's kind of more of an even mix.
So what's interesting about that is it seems like you're adapting to the market and what's happening at the moment. But when you look out at your portfolio, are you looking for a particular mix of residential, commercial, industrial, or are you just looking at the opportunities as they come and evaluating the numbers, or how do you look at that?
Yeah, well, I mean, we like to stay diversified, but it really is at market timing and the fundamentals at that time on where is the most opportunity and yield on a product type at that given time.
Yeah. Okay. Do you guys feel like you really, if you're looking at residential, commercial, industrial, do you feel like you're better at one thing over the other, or what's your sweet spot?
No. I mean, I think we're pretty flexible. So I think is what's been one of our strengths. I think in the development work, given that we haven't focused just on one property type, but you could say we get maybe strung out, but we're still we don't have we're usually we've got a limited number of projects in the pipeline, so we're not stretched out I think from a bandwidth, and so I think we'll focus on that specific project at that time to make sure that we're delivering and executing on the given business plan at that time.
Yeah, for sure. So there's a lot of different regulatory environments that you operate in, whether it's county or different municipalities or cities. How do you factor that in when you're evaluating a project?
Yeah, well, it's been from a timeline standpoint, it's definitely taking longer, and so I think now we're having to factor that into our pro formas, entitlement time, and then it leads to holding costs, and then getting into a different interest environment, and so it is a little more. It's definitely more challenging to kind of hit those pro formas when kind of that your timeline keeps getting pushed out, and it's really out of your control.
Do you feel like that's like getting worse? Is it getting better when you're working with the governments at hand, or?
Yeah, no, it's definitely not getting better. So yeah, no, I mean across the board, it's taking longer to get projects entitled. No matter if it's residential or commercial, they just keep. So it seems like the goal line continuously changes on where you think the end. Where you think the end goal is going to be.
And that's Windsor, that's Loveland, that's Fort Collins, everybody.
I would say it's across the board. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I could pinpoint one that say that one is maybe easier at the moment. It's a pretty consistent, battle.
Interesting. And like we read articles about, I don't know, all these people talking about reducing red tape and, making development a lot easier, especially on the residential side, because, everybody's worried about affordability. You're not really seeing that happen so far.
That's not happening yet in northern Colorado.
Yeah.
It hasn't got down to that layer. Fort Collins, being one that talks about it, but what they say and then what's being implemented, through the building department, is two different things.
Maybe one day.
Yeah, maybe one day.
Yet to be seen. So when you guys this is something that's always fascinated me is, so a lot of times I think of development as, there's this raw piece of land. You might be conglomerating different owners to reach, ownership and then development. Maybe not. Are you just looking at property that's available to you? Or are you like going to the owners of those properties that you find interesting and approaching them to purchase and develop it? Or what does that look like?
Yeah. It's all of the above. And so, we're constantly, I guess, out kind of, hunting for, opportunities ourselves and throughout the network of, other brokers, like yourselves and others around town that may, send us stuff that are off market, for us to evaluate. And then, we can look at, what that might, what the challenges and, what's the best way to, execute on that, on that game plan.
Mm-hmm. What does it look like when you, like in your truck, you're driving around, you see some vacant land and, you kind of have a sense of where, population is moving and those things? Like, how do you know you want to focus on a particular area?
Yeah. Well, I think, our circle, I guess, is pretty small. We really just focus in northern Colorado for our development projects. And so, given, that geographic region, I think it's maybe a little easier than others, that are, on a national scale, they're, trying to hunt out, projects in, multiple metros, et cetera. And so I think, we've got a pretty good, idea and obviously a history on, projects and what is going on here in northern Colorado that we can, evaluate and move pretty quickly, on projects or land, knowing the history that we do here in the area.
Mm-hmm. So it feels like you just have a good sense of it at this point. You've been doing it for so long. You've been here long enough. You know good land and good opportunity when you see it.
Yeah, I think it's just, that's what we do. I think we kind of eat and sleep real estate. So, I'm passionate about it. And I'd like to say, I think we're kind of experts in the area, on both sides of the equation on where growth is going and where the need is, what's undersupplied and, where the demand is so that we can, deliver a successful project.
Mm-hmm. So we've seen a lot of, just focus in the real estate world in residential and in terms of lifestyle amenities, and how those factor into, larger developments. How do you look at that? Are you looking at projects to see, do they offer good access to lifestyle amenities, or is it something you're developing and building into your projects, or what does that look like for you?
Yeah, on the residential side, I'd say, I think, on that side of it, and, maybe it's more on a construction standpoint than maybe a development, but, I think, when we're talking residential, as you're aware, we've built, a lot of, higher end, custom spec homes. Those were focused in neighborhoods that, had high amenities, such as, Harmony Club and the TPC, so that, those were attractive, neighborhoods from a resale value. So I think those are important. And, you've got to understand, where you're building and what your exit is, on that front. But the same thing I think goes for, now with, apartment buildings. Obviously, those are becoming, highly amenitized. And the different caliber of a consumer, but that I think they expect those type of lifestyle amenities to live there, and so I think we're seeing a pretty big gap in demand really from your Class A apartment renter to your B or C that they're not amenitized. I think we are seeing that there is a it's becoming a little more of a difficult challenge to get those leased, for a premium, if they do lack those. So yeah, it's definitely, I think, something that needs to be, considered and be aware of.
Yeah, sure. It seems like that's what buyers are after, whether it's residential, commercial, they want to know what's happening lifestyle wise.
Yep. Proximity to the trails, and even get into the obviously school districts. All of those things are important from a but at the end of the day, I guess it comes back to location, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody talks about it, right? So, with your experience in development, when you're thinking about this region in particular, what do you think is often overlooked? Either from a development standpoint or from something that people don't think about when it comes to Northern Colorado. What's been your experience with that?
Well, I think overlooked from, I guess, what regard you mean?
I don't know. I just, like what did national developers not look at when they're considering Northern Colorado, or what?
Well, I think it's maybe the other way. Maybe what they're overlooking is maybe what they don't know. I think is what I think it's maybe gets maybe some out of state developers in trouble. But it goes back to obviously it's across the board. Maybe from nation, obviously the entitlement. But I think Northern Colorado is a challenging market to build in. It is. Probably it is more expensive. It takes longer. It's more expensive. And there's many factors to that. With the sub pool that we have is a small resource. But just the cost of our permitting and water fees that just keep adding to projects that that you got to be fully aware of. Yeah, what is the end costs, and it really equates to why things cost what they do here in Northern Colorado, and it costs a premium to live here, and I guess maybe it should. So and then today, I mean that equates directly back to the the cost of new projects.
And so what you're saying is, the regulatory environment, the land, all of those things, the subcontractor pool create a higher priced entry point for whatever development you're going to do, and they may not factor that in.
It could be easily overlooked. If they're looking to take their model that they, an example would be, we talked to a multifamily developer based out of Idaho, and they've built the same model of apartment project multiple times in Idaho, Boise, etc. And it cost X, and they think it should cost the same here, and it's easily $50,000 to $70,000 a door more expensive to build the same exact thing here in Northern Colorado, and it's a surprise.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, I guess it goes it's desirable to live here, but like sometimes our wages aren't as high here as they are in other parts of the country, and when you're battling kind of both things at the same end, it makes it challenging.
I think it is a challenge. I mean where the costs are going, and wages. I think that I think I am aware of folks that are moving out of this area, unfortunately, just because the cost of living where they could go elsewhere, and obviously with their remote work and et cetera. I guess it goes two sides, right? I think we saw folks were able move to Northern Colorado because of the remote work, but I think I think there could be another trend where folks are now moving out of Northern Colorado because of remote work, and they can go cost of living to the south at a lot less price point, and still keep their job, and it has no net. There's no net effect, I guess.
It's kind of like 0-0 for either side.
And
when you think about on the flip of that coin, this is also when you're looking at the luxury market, this is kind of one of the better value markets in the country. You can get a great luxury home here at a great price where you can't in many markets. Which is interesting. So, there's a lot of talk about affordability. The municipalities talk about affordability. It's in the press a lot. And for the reasons you just talked about, it is highlighted in Northern Colorado a lot. What do you think about when you hear about the word affordability?
That is a tough formula to solve because the things we've just mentioned, land, Where building permits are going, water fees. I mean, the water fees, I think the last 2 years they've gone up 30% year over year, and that's just one line item in your construction budget. And so before you even dig a hole, depending on the size of the house, but I mean, on a custom home, that's an easy between just your water tap and your building permits. That's a easy $200,000 to $250,000 line item before we even start pouring concrete,
Right.
Or digging a hole. And so when you start, I think that's when folks start talking about where the costs are. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of that's front end. That's not even in the sticks and bricks in the home before you get there.
And it seems like the way politicians talk about it is it's, a simple formula to fix. And it's really, I mean, the costs are what they are. What can you do about it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we got that, and then now, interest rates, with where they are, adds to the holding costs of that, and so there's multiple layers, that get added on to that. The formula it's a very
Yeah.
hard formula, to figure out with with all of those moving pieces.
Yeah, 100%. So, when you look at development over the next 20, 30 years, your world, what do you think are going to be the biggest challenges and opportunities, Northern Colorado and across the nation?
Yeah, I mean, I think, water, I think is the other one. And I think, that's probably the one item that we talked about, that has gone up drastically. And yeah, I think that's something that's going to have to get, solved, long term, not only from a cost standpoint, but just kind of a long term availability, to keep growth moving at a consistent pace.
Totally. And I mean, like you look at the year we're having this year with, record low snow in the mountains. And I got to notice in my neighborhood, we don't have any non-potable water this year, which is, boohoo to us. We don't have water to water our landscaping, but it's a sign of, it's a scarce resource.
Yeah, it's a trickle down effect. Yeah, I mean, obviously, yeah, you got the farmers, the hay. There's no water. Yeah, and now it's a trickle down. Into the no hay, and then the resources and everything goes up. The domino effect of a little bit of rain this winter. I mean,
Yeah, totally. So you're right. That's something it only become more exacerbated in the next 20 or 30 years. So, interesting. What are you excited about in terms of Northern Colorado in the next, I don't know, 5-10 years?
yeah, I mean, I think. I think on the high end, I think as you and I have had talked about, I think there's going to be there's a niche there on the high end home market, which I think we're hoping to tap into and take advantage of. That I think it's been missing, and I think the market is now, I think, finally kind of ripe for that, and that's one that I think we're going to go after, and hopefully we can pick up the demand and fill that market gap.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it's an interesting thing to consider because there are people building, $5-10 million homes all over the place in Northern Colorado, so obviously people are willing to invest here at that level, and so yeah.
Yeah, I think it will be. We're excited. Yeah, I guess not. I shouldn't say test the market, but I think maybe deliver that caliber of a product to the community.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And all the other projects you have going on besides that.
Yeah, we got a few others too.
That's awesome. Well, Alex, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate your time, and it's been really fun. So
No,
we come back.
That was great.
Yeah, so
Thank you.
Thanks everybody for joining us. We'll see you next time.